It was a clear night when the old Zen master and his student sat together on the bank of a still pond, gazing up at the full moon suspended in the dark sky. Its luminous face was perfectly reflected on the mirror-like surface of the water. The student turned to his master and asked, "Is the moon in the sky the real moon, or is the moon in the pond the real one?" The master smiled gently and replied, "What do you think?" The student pondered for a few moments before answering, "I believe the moon in the sky is the true moon, and its reflection in the water is merely an illusion." "But how can you be certain?" asked the master. "Look closely at the water's surface. The moon you see there is just as bright and round as the one above. They appear identical, do they not?" "Yes, but the moon in the pond depends on the real moon to exist. It is an image, unable to generate its own light. It relies entirely on the actual moon," responded the student confidently. "And yet the moon above relies just as much on the pond below in order to be seen," said the master thoughtfully. "Without the surface of the water to cast its reflection, we would not perceive the moon at all, isn't that so?" The student furrowed his brow, perplexed by this idea. After pondering silently for some time, he asked hesitantly, "So which one is real?" The master smiled again and patted his student gently on the back. "You are caught in the illusion of duality, of this versus that, real versus unreal. The mind habits of perception and conceptual thinking can lead us to divide experience into categories, but reality is not so easily defined," he said wisely. "In truth, the moon in the sky and the moon in the water are. Neither can be said to exist independently. The moon above generates light while the pond below reflects it. They depend on each other, arising together in each moment. Do you see?" The student's brow was still furrowed in contemplation. After a while he spoke up hesitantly, "So there is no real or fake. The moon above and its reflection arise together, both equally real and unreal." The master nodded approvingly. "Exactly so. Reality is not fixed but fluid and interdependent. What we take to be real and solid is merely our limited perception of the infinite vibrations that make up the universe, constantly changing, constantly renewing." He gestured towards the pond and continued, "Just as the wind causes ripples to dance across the surface of the water, disturbing the moon's reflection and revealing its impermanent nature, so too do the waves of life dissolve our notions of permanence and reality. When the ripples settle, the peaceful illusion returns." The student sat silently, a look of quiet understanding dawning on his face as he continued gazing at the serene illusion of the moon's reflection. After a long pause, the student spoke up hesitantly, "So, our eyes deceive us. We cannot always believe what we see. Reality is not what it appears to be." The master nodded. "What our senses show us is but a glimpse of the infinite multiplicity that underlies all existence. Our minds take this glimpse and bind it into concepts that obscure the fluid, ever-changing nature of the universe." He gestured towards the pond again. "Just as it is futile to grasp at the moon's reflection, it is impossible to hold on to any one perception of reality. Shifting perspective allows glimpses of truth, but even these are mere reflections of the unknowable whole." The student furrowed his brow, deep in thought. "Then if reality is just a web of reflections and illusions constantly shifting, what meaning can we find in life? What is there to seek if everything I see is not real?" The master smiled gently and put his hand on the student's shoulder. "Do not confuse real with fixed or permanent. Just because something is not solid and unchanging does not make it an illusion. Each glimpse reveals another facet of the truth, like a jewel with many shining faces." He gestured at the shimmering pond. "So, seek not to grasp but to understand. Be still amidst the flows and shifts. Observe how all arises together in interbeing. Therein lies meaning, to know yourself as part of the infinite web, both illusion and reality." The student bowed his head and returned his gaze to the water, a look of calm acceptance settling on his face. Together, the master and the student sat in meditative silence, bathed in moonlight, the veils of illusion falling away to reveal life's intimate dance. After a long period of tranquil contemplation, the student spoke again, his voice hushed. "I believe I am beginning to understand. This world of separation and duality is an elaborate illusion conjured up by the mind. But when we quiet the mind and observe things just as they are, we gain insight into the true nature of reality." The master nodded approvingly. When concepts fall away, perspective expands. We transcend the appearance of self and other, dissolving imagined boundaries. Everything is seen as intrinsically one, just as the moon above and its reflection below arise together. The student pondered this for a few moments before asking, "So enlightenment is seeing past the illusions of the mind to the true essence of all things?" "Enlightenment is recognizing that there are nothings with fixed essences to begin with," replied the master. "It is waking up from the dream of conceptual thinking and experiencing the suchness of each moment, fresh and new." He gestured one last time towards the pond's surface. "Do you see ripples anywhere on the water now?" The student peered closely, then shook his head. "No, it is perfectly still." Like this silent pond, the enlightened mind reflects whatever arises without distortion. At peace with change, it abides in calm, abiding wisdom, mirroring the moonlight of truth. The student bowed deeply in gratitude. Together they sat in wordless communion until the first light of dawn began to brighten the sky. As the sun rose, dispelling the moon's reflected light, a look of profound understanding dawned on the student's face.